I was going to say Arturo's, Pan-Orpheus himself here. Thank you. All right. See if this one's working. Ooh, yeah, that's working. All right. Come and get shocked. Come on, let's get this on video. Who wants to line up for the first shot? Who wants it? Come on. Do I have to shock myself first? All right. I'll do my tit if you want me to. I'll do it. I'm not scared. Okay, here we go. You want the flesh or you want it on the side? These are dollar shocks, by the way. You're going to have to pay up.
3, 2, 1, yeah.
Okay. Just to let you know, he did sign a waiver. Can't even feel it. You want one to the neck? Here, let's try one on the flesh. Here we go. Woo! All right, getting frisky up here. So thank you everybody for being here again. That was Pan-Orpheus. Here's his book, like he just showed. And the next presenter, I just met him last night in person. We had a blast in Detroit, and I don't really have a write-up for most of the speakers. I didn't get to that, but I do have personal relations with all the different presenters. Give it up for Arturo.
Thank you. So glad to be here. It's my first presentation of my first published books. And so more important than a book is the theory, the musical heliosphere's theory of mind and sentence. So who's running the... So my name is Arturo Cusco, and I'm presenting part of my book, Celestial Music, Mind, Sentience, and Divine Tales. There is a bunch more in the book than what I will be presenting. So if you're interested, you can find the book and ebook on Amazon or here at the stand. The book was the first release of my musical heliosphere's theory of mind and sentience. I first stumbled into all of this when I was trying to find out what are brainwaves. Most expect brainwaves to be a phenomenon that is contained inside of the brain, but the human brainwave spectrum has frequencies, and as electromagnetic frequencies, those wavelengths are very huge. The brainwave spectrum is from 0.1 to 100, and if you look at what are those wavelengths, 0.2 hertz has a wavelength of the sun's diameter, and the 100 has a wavelength of the moon's diameter. And so I started off of that weird thing that I found, and it led me into a series of findings. So here I go, next slide. Okay. So this chart is made to scale, and that is the size of Mercury, and then below you see a little wave, and that is the exact center of the gamma brainwave spectrum. And so you see it's almost a complete match, like a 94.5% match is right next to the size of Mercury. The same thing you find Earth matches the center of the beta spectrum with 96% precise. And then you find Neptune, same thing, it has a 100.9% with match with the center of the theta brainwave spectrum. I wanted to say something really quickly about very low waves. This is important to understand. Two quick things. One is that we can only sense electromagnetic frequencies up to 2 times the size of an antenna. And so the biggest wave that we can measure right now is a submarine antenna that measures very extremely low frequency waves from submarines. And so a 6-mile antenna can observe or measure a 12-mile wave. But we can't measure bigger than that. And so all of these waves, if they're out there in the solar system, they're completely invisible to us with current technology. We don't have a way to see waves this large. And the Uranus diameter also matches the Theta center. And here we see Jupiter matching the center of the delta spectrum. Europa matches the maximum gamma brainwave frequency, 100 hertz, by 96%. And the moon very closely matches that too. And at the very bottom, as I said, in neurology books, you might often see the figure 0.2 as the bottom of the brainwave spectrum, and sometimes 0.1. And 0.2 would be the sun's diameter, and 0.1 would be 2 times the sun's diameter. A little more difference here, but I think that the difference has to do with where is the boundary of the sun. If you include the corona, it goes up to 106% match. If you start imagining that maybe the sun's boundary is actually a little further, it really might be at an energetic level. It might have another. And so if you line them up, you see them like from the sun to the moon. You see right there at 100 hertz, our moon in Europa match the top of the brainwave spectrum. And at the very bottom is 2 times the sun's diameter. So in my opinion, celestial music that was searched for thousands of years wasn't found because they were looking at orbits and rates of orbits, but it's not there. It's actually in the sizes of the magnetospheres and diameters of the electromagnetic planets. All 7 electromagnetic planets are there matching the brainwave spectrum. There isn't one that doesn't match. And not just match, like match at the center or at the top of a brainwave. Here you can see the brainwave spectrum from delta to gamma. If you include the transient ripple patterns, you can almost say it goes from the sun to Pluto. And if you just go to the top of the gamma brainwaves, you can say it goes from the sun to the moon in its diameters. Could this just be coincidence? So that was the first find. But then I kept pulling that string and it kept going further and further. So the 0.1 hertz wave is very important in this whole research because it's the largest wavelength that our solar system can resonate electromagnetically to, unless there's a magnetosphere might be capable of resonating. But at least as a diameter of a planet, that's the biggest one. And so this 0.1 hertz, not only is it the bottom frequency of not human brains, every brain on the planet has a 0.1 hertz bottom frequency from what I've seen in the research that I've stumbled into so far. And that's lizards, birds, cat, fish, hippopotamus, orangutan, every brain. Then secondly, the 0.1 hertz rhythm is also the lowest frequency found in the planet's hearts. The slowest, the heart rhythm of 0.1 hertz, a pulse every 10 seconds, beats steadily in blue whales during their deep dives. So this is 2 times the diameter of the sun, the slowest brainwave and the slowest heartbeat on this planet. What's going on here? Why 2 times the sun's diameter? And why do and in the book I call it the ground of consciousness wavelength, because I found that the whole solar system ends up organizing itself around this 0.1 hertz wave. I suggest that the sun acts similarly to an antenna. It is receiving and transmitting celestial music, both the solar systems and the universe's electromagnetic vibrations. I suggest this because an antenna can pick up a signal 2 times its own diameter, and no more. And so hearts and brains' slowest pulse being precisely 2 times the sun's diameter shows that bioelectricity interacts with the electromagnetic structure within the heliosphere. So there is a ridiculously correlated match between the electromagnetic wavelengths of brainwaves and our solar system's bodies. That's that. The next incredible finding that I made is a very mystical one, I must say. I began researching ancient spiritual tales about the celestial spheres that match the brainwaves, and there are abundant parallels. What ancients were talking about, the myths of each planet, match what that brainwave does in our psychology. And so this is the art of Fernando Chamarelli, a Brazilian artist. And here we have a lot of the symbols of Mercury. It's interesting because Mercury often had his wings and his feet, but he also had them right next to his brain too, at his head. Mercury, and what it was known for his speed. And it turned out later that the ancients were right. Mercury is the fastest planet in the solar system. Just as they used to say that Jupiter was the god of lightning, and Jupiter is the most electromagnetic planet in our solar system. And when gamma wave, and so Mercury was also known as the messenger of the gods. And it turns out that when gamma waves start circulating around the brain really rapidly, similarly to how Mercury moves, like a really rapid rotation all around the brain, all the parts of the brain start connecting and sending messages to each other more effectively. He really is causing the messaging between the different brain structures of the brain. Next, across cultures, he's also called Lord of Wisdom. And in the East, Mercury is called Budi, closely meaning intellect. The gifts of dexterity, speed, and prophecy were attributes of Mercury's deities across different cultures since long ago. Similarly, a performer performing a dexterous act, an Olympic runner going top speed, an artist envisioning his new work. Prophecy, speed, dexterity. It's been found that gamma activity is really high when you're doing these things. And so exactly what Mercury is supposed to give us powers to, gamma waves does for our psychology. I'm only sharing a small portion of what is in the book. There were other significant correlations between the planet Mercury and our myths about it, and gamma waves. And these correlations, at least, are repeated with each and every one of the planets. Like each one, if you look at what the brainwave does, and you look at the ancient myths, and there's a match with each one. Astrological myths, in my opinion, must have been exploring deeper layers of consciousness. We were starting to form what could be called cosmic consciousness. Based on my work, I have added the following definition to cosmic consciousness: when the brainwaves and heart rhythms of a language-proficient, self-conscious species synchronize accurately with fully bloomed celestial music. It is important, fully bloomed celestial music. Our solar system has become harmonized to produce celestial music. I won't be able to explain the details of all, but it harmonizes to the point that even the speeds of sound and light harmonize with the proper distancing between the parts of the solar system, so that the speed of sound, the speed of light, and the harmonics within the solar system all find this very interesting balance. The 0.1 hertz wave that I told you is the lowest heartbeat, the slowest brain pulse, and 2 times the sun's diameter. When you measure out the whole, let me get to this next one first. So through this cosmic consciousness, we began sensing specific distances between the layers of our solar system. So first I showed you that the myths match the planet, but also numbers in sacred scriptures tell you the specific distances between the sun and that specific planet. This is investigated in the book as what is titled 0.1 Hertz Scaling of Our Solar System. Basically, the solar system's dimensions, as made up by intervals of bioelectric processing, match sacred scriptural numbers. These numbers were sacred because they are actually the structure of our system of consciousness. In my opinion, celestial music, mind sentience, and divine tales explores the coming of cosmic consciousness in man and woman. It was no coincidence that the period in history that these tales buried truths about the mind's relationship with the stars happened during the time when our appreciation for beauty and art was blooming, and so was philosophy and democracy, sentience, self-consciousness, group consciousness, which is what I call the group becoming aware of itself, were all fully maturing in parallel with insights about cosmic consciousness. I showed you how Mercury's story matches gamma waves. Now look at this numerology hidden in the arc of Mercury's orbit around the sun. The orbit of Mercury is 360 billion meters. If you take that orbit in 0.1 hertz wavelengths, every 3 orbits is 360 wavelengths, and very accurately, like 99% accurately. Mercury is 20 0.1 hertz waves from the sun. If you multiply the distance from the sun to Mercury, 20, by the twinnings on the caduceus, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 times the distance from the sun, and you get the orbit of Mercury, 120. And so that's an example of the actual numerology about how consciousness moves about in the solar system is hidden in the arc. And so these stories' themes match the brain waves. The numerology of the sacred art matches the planet's geometric formation. And look now how the shapes of an astrological myth match even the anatomy of the brain part that is associated with the brain waves. Ancient astrological art was able to predict the interaction between planets and ourselves, even down to the anatomy within our brain. The Ark of Neptune, in the Ark of Neptune, he's often being pulled by a band of hippocampi, this half-horse, half-seahorse creature. And we're talking, I believe, over 1,000 years before the hippocampus was named in the brain. And it turns out that the hippocampus is the main emitter of theta brainwaves, which matches Neptune, which matches the anatomical structure of his horse. And that's why it's called the hippocampus, because it's shaped like the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a main emitter of theta brainwaves. It provides the mind's faculties of long-term memory, spatial awareness, and navigation. And he was the god of seafarers. Navigation, spatial awareness, all coming from the theta brainwaves that connect with Neptune. All these being possibly the most important brain functions for seafarers. And so the stories and even the anatomy of the theta brainwaves match the ancient myths surrounding the planet. And so like this, every one of the 7 most electromagnetic spheres match a brainwave. And their stories match the nature of what the brainwaves does in our psychology. It was already, this is one of my favorite charts right here. And yeah. It was already amazing enough, but then the string kept pulling out more and more amazing findings. Then I scaled out the solar system using the 0.1 hertz wave, which was nearly 2 times the sun's diameter. The slowest brainwave, the steadiest heart pulse on the planet, and the solar system organized kind of magically around this. And so you see Mercury, 20 0.1 hertz lengths. And look at these numbers. These are sacred numbers, 20, 36, 50. The Hebrews used to build, the altar had to be 50 measures from the people. There we see the sun 50 measures from the earth. Then we have Jupiter at 260. And then when you get out a little more, you see Saturn is at 466. Uranus at 1,000, Neptune at 1,500. The whole heliosphere from end to end is 12,000. In the New Testament, it says the kingdom of God in the heavens and the new Israel is 12,000 measures. What is happening is that people were able to sense the system of their consciousness, and someone brought it into the books of religious things. And so, how accurately do these match? Look at this, 36, 99.7% match, 36. 99.9% match, 50. In Sun to Neptune, it's a 99.99997% match. Like it's not 1,503. No, it's 1,500. Exactly. 1,500.0. And you see, the Mercury's orbit is 120. That's the closest planet. And the furthest planet, Pluto, is 12,000 in orbit, same as the size of heaven. And so, a sky reaching these dimensions and then, for example, I found that when they're building quantum computers, there's a special sweet spot of 50 atoms distance where quantum entanglement happens. And so, Earth being 50 measures from the sun, the heliosphere being at 12,000, and more aspects. That's what I call a musical hemisphere. So finally, I will close with this: how the numbers that popped up here point to sacred numbers, and how our location. Yeah, I pretty much said that. That's what the Christians said. The Hindus would say the same thing. They had something called the lokas. And the lokas, they would say, are an inner dimension of consciousness, but also an astral place. And they say that the distance from Tapa Loka to Satya Loka, 120,000 yoyonas. These are yogis, like, measuring their heartbeat and like sitting by themselves, thinking up these numbers. Like, in Tapa Loka reside beings who cannot be consumed by fire. And Satya Loka is the highest of the spheres. And that's the one that matches the 12,000. It's 120,000 yoyonas. And there was more matches there between them. What is the meaning of all of this that I found? One very important take that I have from all this is that art and spirituality are a process by which we become conscious, apparently even to cosmic consciousness. No religion is the sole provider of truth, but through faith and art, we may keep discovering more about ourselves. And finally, if sentient consciousness does depend on celestial music, this is another thing that I didn't have time in this presentation, but I believe that sentience can happen only at that specific location from the sun in a celestial music planet, in a celestial music solar system. I'm soon going to publish a theory of how to find solar systems that are harmonized like this. And so if that's true, this is the most beautiful thing that came out of my book, is the idea that all across the universe, the only beings that are sentient, able to feel love and hate, and are ones that are born under the promise of harmony in their sky. If they didn't have harmony, they wouldn't develop sentience, and therefore, in a way, it shows that there's like a protective care. Like, I don't want you to suffer unless at least the heavens are harmonized for you. You know, it has a really sweet message, I thought. Quick shout out to the two artists whose art is featured within the book: the visionary surreal art of Fernando Chamarelli and the sacred geometry art of Mauricio Brasili. Thank you, buddy, for the space and for your interest in the work. I am sure that there is some connection between these findings and the Doherty set. Thank you. I look forward to seeing many of you up in the booth.
Blowing that horn. All right, I will throughout the night. I'll get better. Wow, that presentation was absolutely amazing. That blew my mind. Was not prepared or expecting that at all. I met this gentleman last night, and we went and had a great time out in Detroit, and all I have to say is I was taking notes. I don't know if anybody else out there was taking notes. I was taking notes, and I'd have to say that his work reminds me of Graham Forstall, Dan Winter, Jeffrey West. Now we can add Arturo to the list of what I would call scale symmetry artists or physicists or thinkers. And it's all fractals. And, you know, of course it matches and aligns, as I saw, perfectly with the Doherty set and the work that I do myself. So, that being said, I think it's time for more shocks.